Morning, everyone. So, haven't done one of these in a couple of weeks, and now it's time for another video to kind of give you guys an update as I come to the end of what I like to call 1A of treatment, I guess. And I'll get into that in a little bit. But first, if you are just watching this video for the first time and you're not friends and family out there, I am a 49-year-old who was diagnosed at 48 with de novo metastatic castration-sensitive prostate cancer that had spread to my bones and my lymph nodes. And I have to take that kind of intro. I have to give credit where credit's due to my friend Jason Stone from Prostate Cancer: A Road to Recovery. Gonna have a link down in the comment section if you're interested in watching some of his videos, which are pretty darn insightful and inspiring. But I also, to let you know, I'm on currently a first and second generation androgen deprivation therapy regimen, and have been doing chemotherapy with docetaxel, or Taxotere is another name for it. And also to let you know, I'm not a doctor. So anything that I say here today is just my opinions and my experiences, and is not to be taken or mistaken for any type of medical advice. All right, so let's get to it. PSA update. PSA, of course, stands for prostate specific antigen. And a PSA test is done by, it's a simple blood test. And if you are a male, 30 years or older, I highly recommend that you get a PSA test. Just to, I mean, if you're 30 to 40, at least you're getting a baseline to see kind of where you're at. But my last PSA test I had done was at 0.09, and this most recent PSA test I completed was at 0.04. So that's a good thing. It's going down. It's within that range of 0 to 4. And of course, when you're on ADT, they like to see you down to nearly undetectable ranges, because again, the goal of the ADT is to basically rob your entire body of testosterone, which is what feeds prostate cancer, and it's doing a very good job of that so far. So so that's good, and we'll see where we go from here. So what's happened most recently that I'm excited to talk about is I had a couple weeks ago my second shot of Eligard. If you remember, I started out on Degarelix, which was a monthly abdominal shot, and then I moved to Eligard, which is another, it does the same thing as Degarelix, but the Eligard is a tri-monthly shot. So every 3 months, it's still an abdominal shot. And then my 7th Exgeva shot. And Exgeva is the medicine I take for the bones. So it basically signals the bones to stop breaking down. So a lot of it's more known as an osteoporosis type of medicine. But there are some risks for some pretty nasty side effects with Exgeva, and I'll get into that in a second. But I will say that the second round of Eligard, it burned a lot more than that first round of Eligard that I did 3 months prior. So just something to know going into it. It was pretty uncomfortable, and that lasted for about a day. And I think the abdominal pain, and it's hard to tell because of because the next day I did the 6th round of chemo, so I don't know if the abdominal pain I was feeling was from the shot or if it was from something having to do with the chemo. But again, it was uncomfortable. The abdominal pain a couple of days after was not as painful as the Degarelix one, but again, it's just something for me to watch going on. With the Exgeva, I mentioned about the side effects. I haven't been experiencing those really bad side effects, which have to do with like a necrosis of the jaw, but I was able to convince the urologist to change that, because with the type of prostate cancer that I presented with initially, it was very aggressive, and so the doctors wanted to be very aggressive, and so that's why I was doing an Exgeva shot monthly. Now that we've gotten the cancer kind of under control, at least that's according to the PSA and the contrast CT scans I've had. We're going to, that's why we exchanged the Degarelix to the Eligard every 3 months, and now I'm going to be doing Xgeva every 3 months as well instead of every month. So I'm happy about that. And then, as I mentioned as well, the 6th and final round of chemo is complete. So I am really, really happy about that. Chemo, you know, in the big scheme of things, I probably handled it well. I probably didn't handle it as well as some, and I probably handled it better than others, but it's done for me. The 6th round is in the rearview mirror, and I'm not going to do another one as far as, you know, anytime soon, you know, knock on wood. And that to me signals the end of part 1A of the treatment. Of course, 1B is the 1st and 2nd generation ADT that I'm currently on, and we'll see, you know, how long that goes. But so the chemo, this 6th round, I think the side effects were something else. Now that said, I think some of the side effects were compounded because of how I treated this 6th round. First, I went into it with a much more positive mindset than I had the 4th round, or sorry, the 5th round, where I really wasn't expecting to get that 5th round. But I went into this with a positive mindset. I also knew, and I had known for a while, that those steroids that they give you to help with the effects of the chemo, they keep me up at night, and they really, you know, really wire me, make me very hungry for that first day. And so I had a plan to combat that. My plan was to be very active and very aggressively active that first day. That included, as soon as I got home, or not as soon, but that evening, that same evening that I got home of the chemo, I went ahead and did 5 rounds of 500 meter row. Then I did 20 kettlebell swings with a 35 kilogram kettlebell, and then I did 15 sit-ups. I did 5 rounds of those. Took me about 20 something minutes to complete, and it really, you know, taxed me. That said, I think it worked. I didn't have nearly the problem going to sleep that night that I normally do. And then the next day, I stayed active. I went to work, and then, or I worked from home, sorry. And then I went to a soccer game, one of my boys' soccer game that night, and I ran the scoreboard. I did announcing, stayed active doing that. And then I got up, so that was a late night. And then I got up first thing in the morning on Saturday, and I went to another of the boys' soccer game. But by halftime of the soccer game on Saturday morning, I knew I had probably done too much. I was zapped. I really wasn't feeling good by that point, and I had to go home and really take it easy. That was the holiday weekend, and I pretty much stayed in bed that Saturday, Sunday, and Monday just because I just was not feeling good at all. As a matter of fact, because of that and because of some of the other symptoms I was experiencing as far as having a lot of GI distress, and just really, really feeling bad. The doc had me come back in and do a blood panel about a week after that last round of chemo, and that blood panel showed that I had, you know, basically no white blood cells, which he was concerned about. And so he had prescribed me some levofloxacin, which is an antibiotic, and he was going to try to get me into Neupogen, which Neupogen is a drug that is supposed to help regenerate your white blood cells, or get your system, your body, to start creating white blood cells more quickly. Now, I want to caveat all this with each time before I do chemo, they would do a blood test. And so this blood test was every 3 weeks because that's when I was having chemo done. Well, if you look at my white blood cell count 3 weeks after the last chemo, it was low. Not as low as it was a week after, but it was still low because of the effects of the chemo. I tend to think that had they done a blood test a week after a chemo, any of the chemotherapies, I think it probably would have shown similar results as to what they saw here. So I don't think it was anything really different or abnormal. I just think that I taxed myself a little bit too much coming out of that 6th round, and it was a 6th round, so everything was cumulative on top of it, and I probably was just really, really tired from it, and maybe came down with something because there's just, a bug that's been going around everywhere for the last couple of months, and I probably just got a little taste of that as well. But I am feeling a lot better now, and I ended up not getting the Neupogen. Well, the doctor's office never called, so I guess the insurance company declined it. But regardless, they never called me. So I do want to make one more comment about or really 2 more things regarding the chemo. I had read before I had gone into the 6th round that one of the things you could do to offset the metallic taste, where your food, everything tastes like metal basically, or you really just lose your taste. To offset that, what you do is you chew ice cubes during the treatment and after the treatment, and that helps keeping the temperature of your mouth, inside your mouth, really low. It's supposed to, slow the blood flow to those cells and therefore stop some of the chemo from getting there. It's the same theory as why some people wear cold caps when they're doing chemo, or in order to stop the hair loss, or they wear cold gloves to stop this. You really can't tell from the camera, but over time, the chemo will flatten your nails and discolor them and just make them look gnarly. It makes it even more effective when I put up the hood and I can do my little Emperor Palpatine imitation. Now that I, look like either a cross between Emperor Palpatine and a bleached eggplant or something along those lines right now. But so that's the first thing. And the second thing is, after this last round of chemo, what that really means, and why I'm really excited, is that means I get to get this port out of my chest. So that is scheduled for next week, and I'm really excited about it. Also a little anxious because it is an in-office procedure, whereas to put it in, they put me under, and they did surgery to put it inside. The actual taking out is just an in-office procedure where they numb it up a little bit, cut it open, and pull it out, and sew it up, and off I go. So something to talk about with regards to that as well. When I had finished the 6th round and had gone back to the doctor, one of the things that I asked was, hey, when can I get the port out? And this oncologist, my oncologist, or former oncologist now, he had said they wanted to keep it in for a year. And that was, they do that because if you're going to, the 1 year point, or within a year, is the greatest chance of a relapse to where you might need to go back on chemo or something along those lines. My issue is they tell you that you can't do upper body resistance training when you have the port in. They really don't want you doing any of that. Plus, paddle boarding, or basically things that really help you or help prevent or slow the amount of muscle loss that you experience when you're on ADT, which of course, if you read other reports, say that that type of exercise is very important, that you continue if you are on any kind of ADT therapy. So it's a catch-22. So I told the doc, listen, I've got to start resistance training again. I've got to get back into it. And so at that point, he did agree to have the port removed, although that wasn't his first choice. I mentioned that he's my former oncologist. I have switched oncologists, and I wanted to talk to the new oncologist before I had the port removed, just in case he could make a better argument to me to convince me to keep it in. And he, without hesitation, had said, no, you're done with chemo. Let's remove the port. That's, it's a no-brainer. Let's go ahead and do it. And I told him what the other oncologist had said, and he said, yeah, but based on my response so far and my continued response to the ADT, it just makes a lot more sense for me to get the port out. So all that to say, port is coming out. I'm excited about it, and You know, I'm debating having the wife film it, but I don't know if YouTube would allow me to show it, depending on how graphic it is. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. But so that's really the big news. Done with 1A, done with the chemo. So I'm excited about that. I can kind of get used to the ADT. You know, kind of like, well, that is a perfect segue into what's next. I mentioned before about kind of what's next. I think I'd mentioned going to the radiological oncologist and talking about maybe doing some radiation afterwards. So part of that is getting another scan. And the scan that we need to get in this case is another one of the PET PSMA scans like I got when I was first diagnosed. And a PET PSMA scan, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, is a scan that specifically looks for prostate cancer in the body. And how they do this is they inject a radioactive isotope into your blood. They wait for, you fast for a little bit beforehand, and you fast so when the isotope, which is a type of sugar too, a radioactive sugar if you want to think of it that way, when it gets into the blood, those cancer cells, the prostate cancer cells specifically, are going to take that up and eat it and use it for fuel. So you can see more specifically, more accurately where the cancer has spread. So we need to get another one of the PSMA PETs to compare it with the original PSMA PET to see how well the body has responded to the therapy that I've been on. Based on those results, if I have been able to localize the cancer back to the prostate, best case scenario, or if it's just in the prostate, maybe, you know, 1 or 2 lymph nodes, then we will look at radiating or localized radiation to the prostate and, you know, a lymph node if it's just, you know, 1 lymph node or 2. You know, to try to kind of go from there and see what happens. But that's the next step in the therapy as far as the next big thing. Otherwise, if that doesn't happen, it's really just staying on ADT and trying to play whack-a-mole with the cancer. And I say that because, you know, every doctor will say that prostate cancer at some point will outsmart the androgen deprivation therapy. So it will become, right now, whereas I'm hormone sensitive or castration sensitive, there's a point in time, if I stay on it long enough, that I'll become castration resistant or hormone resistant, which means the ADT won't be working anymore and the PSA will start rising, which does not necessarily mean, but it's a high correlation that if the PSA starts rising, that means the cancer is starting to spread again. So some things that doctors do to try to help that not happen is they try to keep you on ADT for a while and then take you off and put you on, depending on your responses, depending on what the PSA is doing, depending upon how you're doing on the therapy, how you performed, or whether or not you had chemotherapy. You know, I've read anywhere between 1 year to 2 years that I would be on ADT. Some doctors have said, well, you know, if you're this responsive, I mean, my last oncologist had said, you know, let's take a look in 3 months, and if you're still responding this well, we'll look at maybe taking you off of an ADT for a little bit. And then they'll take you off of ADT until they see a rise in the PSA, and then they'll put you back on. But yeah, that's what's next. So that's out of that. It's a beautiful day outside. It's not as cold as it has been here in North Florida. And yeah, I mean, I'm in a good place. I will be in a better place when I get this port out and I can start getting back into more physical exercises. This chemo, I'll be in a better place, even, you know, getting the chemo out of the system and really kind of getting back to normal, at least whatever normal that is with ADT. And I've heard or read that, you know, it's going to take a while for my body to get the chemo completely out of the system, and not just out of the system, because I think it's technically out of the system within a relatively short period of time, but it's the effects, it's the rebuilding of the body that's going to take longer. And of course, it takes even longer not having any testosterone and being on the ADT. So with that said, everything else is good. Family's doing well. I appreciate everybody's comments. I've been getting some really good comments based off of the interview I did with Jason on his podcast, Prostate Cancer: A Road to Recovery. If you haven't had the chance, I recommend you check that out. He's got some really good information on there. And I'll make these things more professional eventually, like he does, and maybe convert this into a podcast at some point. But I don't know. This is really, like I said in the very first one, part of this is done for me. I do this for myself because it helps me get things situated mentally. And it's also for, my family and friends. So you guys kind of know how I'm doing if you're interested. But for family and friends, if you know someone else who is going through cancer treatment, or especially prostate cancer treatment, please recommend them here or to some of those other sites that I've linked in the comment section on previous videos. They've helped me, and hopefully they'll help some other people that you know too. So without further ado, I think I've rambled on long enough. Hope everybody has a great week, and remember, until next time, anything is possible.